And to provide more analysis, joining us from London is Mr. Nicholas Williams, former NATO official, and it's a very warm welcome and a pleasure to have you with us today in today's episode of In Focus, sir. Mr. Williams, with the EU's 19th sanctions package now targeting Russian LNG and shadow fleets, can economic pressure alone force Putin to the negotiating table, or is Europe risking escalating without a clear end game, sir?
Yes, good evening, Rana. Pleasure to be with you. It's doubtful, to say the least, whether President Putin will be swayed by these sanctions. He survived every other package of sanctions. What's changed is the President Trump's sanctions, but he hasn't actually imposed secondary sanctions. And so he's left a bit of a gap for Putin to cajole and persuade him that it's Russia who's being flexible, not the Europeans and not the Ukrainians. But this 19 package for the Europe by the EU is, as you say, a bit of an escalation taken together with the package or the sanctions from the President Trump.
Sir, how do you read, or what's your narrative on the impact of this 19 sanctions on Russia's economic, or how harmful is it going to be towards a country like Russia, or will Russia ignore and go on as usual, like it is the policy, of course, as we all know, of President Vladimir Putin?
Well, yes, these sanctions will be harmful to Russia. It will weaken its ability to finance the war even more. But I think what will count is China's support, not EU sanctions and not President Trump's sanctions. What will count is if the Chinese, who are a major purchaser of oil and oil products from Russia, whether China will say enough is enough, you need to find a way out of this war, because Putin's objectives are not affected in any way by these sanctions in terms of what he's able to achieve on the battlefield, and he's achieving his aims on the battlefield progressively but slowly.
Sir, Zelensky is urgently seeking long-range weapons like Tomahawks from European allies, yet divisions remain. Does Europe have the unity and will to match US military support, or is Ukraine being left to fight a war on borrowed time?
Well, the Europeans are running out of money. That's why they're targeting the deposits which the Russians have in Euroclear, and so the money issue is vital, and Trump has persuaded the Europeans to buy equipment from the Americans to give to the Ukrainians. For the Ukrainians. But again, Europe can't survive financially and provide the Ukraine with all it needs. And this is the problem. And Putin realizes that the Europeans are running out of money, and that's why they need Trump and are happy that Trump has now imposed some form of sanctions, oil sanctions, in relation to Russia.
The EU just launched a 3.8 million euro labor market initiative for Ukraine's reconstruction while debating the use of frozen Russian assets. Is this a genuine recovery plan or a symbolic politics amidst a deepening fiscal gap, sir?
Yes, it is an attempt to be a genuine plan, as I said.
Sir, can you elaborate
the,
more about an attempt to be a genuine plan? You don't believe it to be a genuine plan?
Well, it's the plan to support Ukraine and reconstruct Ukraine requires a lot more sustained finance than is available to the EU. Even with the collateral of the Russian deposits in Belgium and in London. And so what the Europeans hope for is increasing the pressure for Europe, by Europe on Russia, and Russia and Ukraine go to the negotiation table with a strengthened Ukraine, backed by the Europeans, and this war comes to an end on terms which are not so unfavorable to Ukraine. Because if this war continues for a year or so, it'll be painfully obvious that the Ukrainians and the Europeans cannot sustain this war indefinitely.
At the same summit, sir, Egypt and the EU held their first ever joint summit, signing deals on trade, Horizon Europe, and Gaza reconstruction. Can Cairo truly become Europe's strategic bridge to Africa and the Arab world, sir?
I think Egypt, of course, is a significant, important country in the Middle East, and it has a joint interest with the EU to alleviate the problems of the Middle East, both economic, migratory, and so on. And so, yes, this partnership with the EU can bring practical results. But more importantly, I think Egypt and the EU are looking for a way out of total dependence on the United States. They want some form of autonomy and some form of control over their own affairs in their own region. And of course, Egypt and Europe, and particularly Southern Europe, forms part of a coherent and historically coherent region.
And sir, do you see this imminent? Do you see this possible? Do you see it's a long way yet to go? How do you read?
It's a long way yet to go because the structures of the Cold War and post-Cold War are so deep in European structures, so deep in Middle Eastern structures, that it's difficult to break out of them quickly. And so EU and Egypt and many other countries in the Middle East are hedging their options and trying to expand their but their margin of maneuver, irrespective of the United States.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi stressed Egypt's role in halting irregular migration and hosting millions of refugees. Will Europe translate this into sustained investment, sir?
Yes, the EU is a bureaucratic organization, but when it decides something, the bureaucracy kicks in and does its business, albeit slowly. And of course, this migration is the number one problem, or irregular migration is the number one problem facing European countries. The politicians believe that Ukraine is the number one problem. The threat of Russia is the overarching cause of this problem. But the populations are turning ever more to populist politicians because of this migration issue. And so the EU has a real incentive to work with Egypt and other countries, but Egypt is a serious major country in the Middle East, work with Egypt to alleviate this problem.
The EU backs a two-state solution and Gaza reconstruction, but Israel rejects UNRWA's role, and Trump's Gaza plan remains vague. Can Brussels shape peace, or is it sidelined by United States Israeli decisions, sir?
Yes, I agree with you. I think it's Europe so far is sidelined. It doesn't have, it has a voice. It doesn't have a credibility with the Americans. The Americans humor them, but the main issue and axis in the Middle East is the United States and Israel, and Europe having abandoned its role 20 years ago or more, and 30 years ago, is struggling to find a role in the Middle East. But it knows that the Middle East is even more crucial to their security, European security, than it is to American security. And so it has to find a role, but it will be slow. And again, with the war in Ukraine, what the Europeans don't want is to go too quickly in terms of finding a role in the Middle East, while isolating United States and upsetting the United States, because they need, at this point, the United States to weigh in against Russia for the support of Ukraine.
So we end this segment that they need the United States, sir. That was Mr. Nicholas Williams, former NATO official. Thank you for your valuable time.